Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good afternoon to you all, and welcome to Pertinent Questions on Western Spring Television at Gumbelu, Osogbo. It is the 3rd of July and the first edition of the program in this quarter, and indeed in this second half of the year 2023. How time flies. The law plays a very significant and important part or role in human existence. Yes, because the law exists, the Hobbesian concept of life being short, brutish, and nasty appears to have been held in a jacket. It's been prevailed upon. And so humanity has a tendency to feel free and do whatever he likes without recourse to fearing the Hobbesian concept. The law is our focus today, and I have with me on the program where we are going to focus on citizens and how to engage the different aspects of the law. In the studio with me is a senior lawyer in the state. He's a senior lawyer because he has been through it all. Yeah, he used to be the director of legal drafting. He was at a particular time the director legislative drafting and legal services of this at the OSUN State House of Assembly, where he spent some 7 years. Currently, he is the, how do I call it? He is the commercial, the director in charge of commercial, and I think legal it is drafting. Legal drafting. Please, it is commercial. Correct it for me. And commercial and legal drafting. It's my pleasure to welcome to the studio of a gentleman I would like, for the purpose of this discussion, we would like to refer to him as KAYODE the Law. It's my privilege to welcome Mr. KAYODE TITILOYE, the Director, Commercial and Legal Drafting
State Ministry
in the State Ministry of Justice, Osogbo. You are most welcome.
Thank you very much.
To Western Spring Television, where I happen to be your host for today.
It's my pleasure to be here, sir.
How do you find this place?
Very lovely, very beautiful. I'm not disappointed, drawing from our experiences with Rave FM. Okay,
you are not disappointed. You remain not disappointed. We are focusing on the law today. And the ordinary man in the street knows that he's often told that the law is an ass. The law is an ass. What is the meaning of this and what brought it about?
Well, thank you very much. It's by way of saying, by common parlance. Just for example, like people will say politics is a dirty game.
Okay.
So on and so forth.
Yeah.
The law is blind.
Okay.
And the law is unattached. The sword of the law has double edge. And the law can be directed to address any issue in the interest of the parties to the matter in issue. Now, you have an arbiter. You have different lawyers advocating different causes before the arbiter, strongly, intelligently. And if you don't have the capacity, the skill, or the know-how, you will not be able to stand them and you will lose your case. So what determines whether you lose your case or win your case is a multiple factor, depending on how good your case is, the facts, the existing law, the code, the statute, and how good your lawyer is. So the common man, or if I may borrow the word layman, who is not a lawyer, see that a lawyer will always advocate a cause strongly, and for him, he may not be able to say who will win or who will lose. Okay. And indeed, the person you think will lose may win, and the person you think will win may lose. Depending on the arguments they present. On those factors brought together. And the same lawyer that argued this way today may argue that other way tomorrow. You can lose where you win, and you can win where you lose, depending on the interplay of those factors. So people say the law is an ass. It depends on who's writing it and the direction the person is facing. It leads me to this second concept that the ordinary man knows. And I want to ask, is it also a relative concept that the people have, that the law is what the judge says it is? We in the public domain, we believe that the law is always what the judge says it is. Well, you see, that actually is the beauty of the law. The law is said to rest in the bosom of the judge. But the law judge is not, as it were, the creator of the law. The judge does not originate the law. It is the cases that are brought before a judge, that are advocated before a judge, that the law relating to such cases will be applied to, and the judge will make a pronouncement over. So if a law is not brought before a judge for application, for interpretation, or for validation, you cannot say a judge makes such a law. Yet that law is enforceable, is applicable, is enforceable for the good of the society and humanity. So in that sense, you can't say a judge makes a law, because a lot of our laws may not come before them until there is a dispute. However, people say a judge makes law because whatever pronouncement a judge makes upon the law as to what the law is stands as the law until overruled by a superior court, or until the legislature amends such law to read otherwise, in line with the ground norm of the society. So whatever decision the judge makes in his capacity within his judicial competence is the law to that extent. We call it case law. So we are not wrong. We in the non-legal framework, we are not wrong in saying the law is what the judge says it is. You are not wrong, but it's not an absolute statement. Because the judge also depends on the statute and the constitution. Even the judge finds what the law is and applies it in adjudicating on matters before him. But then they are the Lord in their court. So their words as to what the law is in that court on that subject is final until overturned by a superior court, or such law is amended by the legislature. Our essence here today is, our topic is engaging with the law. How do citizens engage with the law? What do we mean by that? Thank you very much. The truth is that if the citizen does not consciously, deliberately engage with the law, unknowingly and unconsciously, the law is engaging with him. Every aspect of human endeavor is governed by laws from the beginning of the state, of the human society. So we are always interacting with the law. However, some are not aware until they run into trouble with the law, or they need the protection of the law. If you ask me any question about any area of life, I can tell you what law governs or direct that area of the law. So whether somebody is conscious about it or not, we are all engaged with the law.
let's begin, therefore, with the basic ones. I consider it basic because I am not a lawyer. I'm not learned, as you normally will put it. The criminal law, how can a citizen engage with the law on criminal issues?
Thank you very much. When it comes to crime, it is very instructive for every citizen to ensure they find out what the law is about anything they are embarking upon, so that they will not cross the line. Because the law is that ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And so what he started with innocent intention can become a crime, either indictable offense or a misdemeanor. Even though there are some that are excused if there is no intention, if you cannot establish the mens rea, the criminal intention. But there are also offenses that are strict liability offense. If you do them, it doesn't matter what your intention is or what your ignorance is, you are sanctionable. And so we ask ourselves, what is the law governing this transaction? What are the limits, my limits? How far can I go before being seen as an offender?
Okay.
There are several, in almost every human endeavor too, there are always limits. If you cross those limits, you become an offender.
Red line.
Yes.
Okay, let's begin with basics. I call them basics because they are everyday happenings. How can we engage with the law in terms of traffic offenses, in terms of what you lawyers called indictable offenses?
Well, thank you very much. Traffic offenses largely are misdemeanors. That is, light offenses that can be tried at the lower courts that are not courts of records, and that can be tried at courts of summary jurisdiction, and that gives light punishment or fines or sanctions. But there are some traffic offenses that by the law establishing them are serious offenses. And there are some that, for example, if a traffic offense leads to fatality, then
death.
If it's due to negligence, it can be a criminal negligence, and in some cases it may be manslaughter. If somebody drive in a way, for example, that a reasonable man will be expected to know, driving in such a way can readily lead to the death of the next person, and he is a mature person who is not insane, who is not drunk, and he drives in such a negligent or reckless way that a reasonable man should know, and he cares not. If somebody dies, he becomes a suspect for manslaughter. So even though generally traffic offenses are seen as misdemeanors, some of them can be indictable depending on the circumstances of the case.
So when you are charged with manslaughter, the presupposition is that you have slaughtered a man without intentionally doing it.
You can just put it that way. That you kill somebody even though you don't intention to murder.
Okay. Light offenses, you call them traffic. But today they are becoming bigger and bigger offenses. The average Nigerian sees road marshal on the road and is afraid. Why is it so? It's supposed to be very minor offenses, you call them, but they have turned into becoming huge offenses.
Oh, well, what the road marshals do on the way is what we call, I will, in my own humble opinion, call it a plea bargain.
Okay.
For minor offenses.
Plea bargaining.
And it's not just in our jurisdiction, in our society. Yeah, even in the advanced society or the first world, it's all there. If you are caught to have violated some traffic offenses that they don't consider too grievous, you are issued a ticket or you are given a fine. it's an administrative fine. If you volunteer on your own to pay the fine or to accept that administrative sanction, then they will not prefer a charge against you. Because if a charge is preferred against you, you become a convict for that minor offense. And some people will go to jail for 1 month or 2 weeks if they don't want to pay fine. And sometimes the judge in his discretion may decide not to give an optional fine. But if it's such a person that violates the traffic rule, humbly accepts the sanction, the administrative sanction of the law enforcement agents on the road, or like the marshals, then they don't charge them. So it's like a caution, a check, a warning.
Why is it that in our country, be it the police, be it the marshals, they hardly warn in Nigeria? Officials hardly warn. They tell you have contravened and they book you.
Well, like I just said, the booking itself in law does not have any legal clout beyond warning. Ordinarily, if somebody is booked 2 or 3 times on the same wrongdoing, traffic breaking the same traffic rule, by discretion, you should be able to insist that that person should be charged. So that booking is voluntary too. You can choose not to pay it and ask them to charge you to court if you know you are not wrong, for example, and then you get to court and you are vindicated.
Okay, let's talk about something very common to us. You've explained how do we engage the law in property businesses? Well,
whether for business purpose or for personal domestic use or for any kind of ownership, if you want to acquire property, everything surrounding property has to do with the law, because the exchange of title, the transfer of title has to do with the law. For example, property begins with the land. The land itself is vested legally in somebody, either in the government if it's in the urban area, or it's customarily held if it's not in the urban area. So if you want to acquire that, that transfer process must be legally enshrined, otherwise it should not be enforceable. So therefore, when you want to acquire a property, you need the law, and probably you need a lawyer. It's not as if you cannot do your own thing yourself, but as the saying goes, you can run into trouble. So if you want to acquire property, engaging the law begins with probably conducting a search. There are some that you need to go to the land registry, go to some offices to conduct a search as to the legal status of the land. Sometimes you even need to contact bailiffs and local heads of communities to find out the validity of the claims of the vendors, or actually the root of title. The work of a lawyer does not begin and end in the courtroom or on papers. There are so much more to it. So the acquisition of property begins with findings and conducting of searches. Some of those things can be done by non-lawyers, and some can be better done by lawyers. Then after, you go to the level of documentation, drawing out deeds of conveyance that will transfer title from one person to the other. Then you go to the registration of those such deeds of conveyance or title documents, and then you keep them until such day, if such day arises that there's a dispute, you bring them out to prove and establish your title.
This program today, I want to plan it to take an educative line. And so everything we are discussing, we want to find out based on our topic, engaging with the law. One aspect of law which is very, very engaging and which is very, very common to us is human rights. How does a citizen engage the law when it comes to human rights?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I am quite very much interested in this. Now, human rights are said to be natural rights. Every human being is born with rights. Even the unborn baby has rights. It's debatable in some other society, but in our own society, the unborn baby has a right. It's already a human being inside the womb. So human rights are made enforceable in Nigeria by their being codified or passed into our ground norm, as we call it, that is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in Chapter 4. And all the rights that are called first generation rights contained in Chapter 4 are enforceable. Now, several rights there are: rights to life, right to own property, right to freedom of movement, right to expression of opinion and religion and thoughts, right to all kinds of right to dignity of human person. So those rights are to be protected, because ordinarily we say we promote human rights. How do we promote it? Bring people into the consciousness of these rights. Nobody can just know about the life of another person without a judgment of court to that effect, unless in a state of war. And there are so many others like that. Now, you also have to protect your rights. And because of vulnerability, there are so many people who exploit and abuse other people's rights, either to make pecuniary gains or to establish for themselves a kind of status, the oppressed and all that. And it can be institutions, it can even be government. So the rights of these people have to be protected. And the protection of your right begins with yourself. You have to know what your enforceable rights are. And if you see that anybody is trying to abuse them or to deny you those rights, you respectfully, courteously demand that those rights be respected. And if anybody attempts or abuse those rights, then you are entitled to go to court, to consult a lawyer, and to file a fundamental human rights enforcement procedure to either protect your right from being abused or to get those rights back, and to get
if they have been taken away,
if they have been taken away, if they have been abused, and then to also get a remedy in form of compensation or damages or whatever. And these rights, I discover so many people in the society are not aware of them.
Yes.
And they are not things that we can discuss.
But basically, a few aspects.
You need to know that nobody, it's our consciousness tells us that nobody can just wake up and kill another person. Everybody has a right to life, to live. And secondly, the right, for example, to freedom of movement. Except you are a minor under parental control and caution and check, nobody has a right to lock you up anywhere.
Okay.
And that is why even if you have been suspected of having committed an offense, the Constitution has limited the number of hours or days that the law enforcement agent can keep you with them for the purpose of investigation, except unless they have gotten a court order to keep a person for a longer time. And the right to expression of freedom of expression of thought and opinion, for example, is what enable a journalistic outfit like this to be able to do investigative journalism and to be able to hear views and to allow people to give their opinion, and also to choose what religion you want to do and practice it freely, as long as it's not barbaric and against good conscience and against justice, and it does not deny other people their rights. And the right to own property, for example, gives you the opportunity to buy and to sell your own property. The right to dignity of human person is also enshrined in the Constitution. Many people do not actually know that to even shout on another person abusively in a humiliating way is abuse of the right to the dignity of that person, even if that person is a minor.
Okay.
We have a law in the state now, protection against domestic violence. Verbal abuse is domestic violence. When you raise your voice at somebody abusively in such a way that threaten or cow that person or confuse the person, it becomes domestic violence.
These have been in the, they are instructional. They are there for everybody.
Yes.
But the government that is supposed to oversee this itself keeps on denying citizens their fundamental human rights at certain times, like imprisoning somebody for without any particular what you refer to, because you suspect him, because you think you suspect his terror, because you suspect his religious activities are not in tandem with, etc. You're a lawyer, you know it. The way government brutalizes this human.
No, the government doesn't do that.
What does it do?
Who is the government that does this? It is human beings like you and I who are occupying one office or the other. I'll give you an example. Mr. President has advisors. He has his expertise perhaps in accounting, but he has lawyers around him as advisors. So if he wants to take an action, we have said every human endeavor is governed by law. He makes inquiry, he finds out what are the limits of law within which he can operate. Okay. If he's advised wrongly or he's not advised, or as a person he does not seek advice and he takes a wrong step that abuses somebody's right, you can say government. It is that person in that office, even though he's using the powers of the office we put him. And once we know that particular person is abusing that office, there is provision in the law to check him or to correct him.
Governments have never checked. Even this current one, we are not accusing him, but when it comes to government, I mean, human rights, Emefiele, everybody rejoiced when he was incarcerated. But for how long will he be incarcerated? Should he be?
That is exactly the point I'm making. Mr. President gave a directive that is within his right to give. The DSS has a duty to perform, and their duty stops short when the facts and issue become civil matters. They should, their duties within the realm of security. As long as the issue goes transcend that, they should hand him over to the police. The police should do their investigation,
but they are not
and
doing
then charge him to court.
Look at what.
But if they don't do it, who should do it? The person should give an order, or who should stop somebody from abusing the law doesn't do, should be engaged. Actually, you can sue the DSS, you can sue the police.
For 6 years or more, this Kaduna religious leader has been held. Zaki has been held. Right now, Emefiele is being held by this new government. There are many instances. Kanu is being held. We are not challenging what they have done. We are not suspecting them not to have done.
My position, sir, is that yes, it's wrong for anybody to, and it's even destroying the society for people to disobey doing it
at the level of governance.
Order of court. For example, if the court says you can hold them, then nobody's abusing their right. Okay. Because the court has said you cannot be kept except by. But if the court says
court has not said.
If the court says, even there are some of these examples you mentioned where the court has said release this person and they refuse to. Now, if that decision refusing to obey that order of court is made by a middle level officer, the officer in charge or the supervisor officer should sanction him and should make him subject to the long arms of the law. But if it is the edge of government that is refusing to obey the law, he also have checks. For example, if it's a minister, the president should.
But the presidents have
if the president fails or the governor fails to carry out his supervising authority over his ministers or commissioners, as the case may be, that is why you have the check and balances. Do you know the parliament, which are your representatives or my representatives, they are empowered by the law to caution the president or the governor, the chief executive, to question their activity, to advise them, to direct them within the ambit of the constitution,
it's easier said
and to even impeach them where they refuse to obey the law.
Even a body you belong to, Nigerian Bar Association, have they been criticizing these things?
Yes, of course we have. Let me come back to the line hierarchy of checks. And even the parliamentarians, where they are supposed to check the executive, and they fail to do so. The people whom they represent in all the constituencies have the legal, legitimate power to recall their individual.
It is easier said than done.
Why is it easier said than done?
Because of our system.
Now, who created that system?
All of us, led by government.
You see, the government doesn't just arrive. It's either, if you have a democracy, we elect our leader. And we are responsible for the kind of leaders that we have.
I think we are due for a break, I suppose. And we will come back to... Okay, my producer says we should go ahead. It looks like he's getting thrilled by what you are saying. Because
we elect our leaders. For example, if I see somebody, if I feel I need somebody who is violent, who is rough, but who has a tendency for dictatorship to lead because of a particular problem in society, and we let that person, he may solve the one problem we think he will solve, but he may create several others by his violence, by his dogry, by his dictatorial tendencies. So it is for the electorate to decide in the next 4 years that we don't need a leader like this. This is a leader with the kind of leader and the leader we need. And so if the electoral system is working and people are able to vote and their vote counts, they can always change their leaders as to the kind of persons they want. People will carry out the intentions of the populace, what is good for the society. And once the leader knows that people will vote them out, and then the parliament will act because they know the people will act on them if they don't, and the governor knows he will respect the wishes of the people shown by the parliament, and those of us who are working for the government knows that the governor can give us a directive and we must obey. You will see that the society will run seamlessly and you have a good society.
The man on the street or in the home watching us will share with you, I mean, will agree with you, but he will also know that it is easier said than done.
It's easier said than done because we have been so long doing it the wrong way.
Okay, we'll break. There will still be time for us. We'll come to the second part of the program. I want to appreciate all you have said. We asked Mr. KAYODE TITILOYE, a senior lawyer here in Osun State, is in the house. We are discussing issues pertaining to engaging the law.
Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905. Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history. Badamasi Adegoke Adelabu was a prominent figure in Ibadan politics and Western region before Nigeria's independence. He was a key founder of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, a political party that held lofty the torch of liberty for the two West African countries. He carved a niche for himself as a wordsmith and a creative speaker. The nickname Kwenkelemens was a natively corrupted version of peculiar mess, his bombastic English language style often used to score proceedings at the parliament. The author of Africa in Ebullition, a handbook of freedom for Nigerian nationalists, was Nigeria's Federal Minister of Natural Resources and Social Services between 1955 and 1956. He died in an auto crash on the 25th March 1958 at the age of 42. Western Spring Television identifies Adegoke Adelabu as a watershed character in history. Ahmadu Bello, a Prince Royal was born 6th of December 1910 at Raba Village, Sokoto, northwestern Nigeria. His father was a district head and heir apparent to the Sultanate throne from the house of Usmanu Danfodio, a religious and social reformer who brought the Habib dynasty under the Fulani Caliphate at the beginning of the 19th century. Ahmadu Bello raised the bar of political consciousness and participation when, in 1944, he engineered the establishment of the Northern People's Congress (NPC) as the first political party in northern Nigeria and the rallying point for politicians in the region before independence. History will not forget Ahmadu Bello for his charisma and political sagacity, which provided easy passage for his kinsmen to assume political and administrative positions in Nigeria's post-independence era. The distinguished elder statesman and Sardauna of Sokoto has his face on his country's 200 naira currency as a mark of honor to one of the architects of Nigeria's independence. Western Spring Television identifies Ahmadu Bello as a watershed character in history. This iconic African presents the narrative of a man destined to exert an imperishable global influence in Western education. His was a story of a freeborn, captured and sold into slavery. He was born in Oshogun, a native Yoruba village near Iseyin in Okeogun axis of southwest Nigeria. Samuel Ajayi Crowther was the foundation student of Fora Bay College, Sierra Leone, the foremost university where the pioneer set of native Africans were educated. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's greatest contribution to humanity was his translation of the Holy Bible into the Yoruba language. The man who authored the Yoruba dictionary was also credited with the translation of English classic hymns into Yoruba and the Ekwere languages. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's private residence in Badagry, incidentally the first story building in Nigeria, is an archival museum dedicated to the memory of Africa's first bishop. Western Spring Television identifies Samuel Ajayi Crowther as a watershed character in history.
Welcome back. The show is on Western Spring Television. We call it Pertinent Questions. In the studio with me is Mr. KAYODE TITILOYE, whom I have always loved on this program to call KAYODE the Law. Can citizens run away from the law? Should they? That's the question I want to.
Well, thank you very much for that question. Like I said earlier on, if the citizen does not engage the law, the law will engage the citizen. So there's no way we can avoid the law, because every aspect of human endeavor is governed by the law from the birth. In fact, from the point of pregnancy, once a woman is pregnant, in some jurisdiction like Nigeria, for example, you don't have a right, a legal right to abort that fetus. If you do, you commit an offense. You have an agreement with the law. So it means that fetus has a right to life in the womb of the mother. From birth, the moment the child is born, there is a certificate of birth, a life. He has a life. Even the parent cannot kill that child. That's called infanticide. And that child has some basic and fundamental rights. And as he grows up, there are some places where not to put your child in school becomes legal wrong. And as you grow up to become successful, we talked earlier on about property law. You want to get property, there's a law about that. You want to get an employment, there are employment laws. You want to start an entrepreneurship, there are labor laws, commercial laws that covers that. Even when you sneeze, there's a law that covers it. Maybe the environmental law, maybe medical law. Okay. So there's a law for everything about human endeavor. Okay. It's wise to find out what is the law, either by general knowledge or by consulting a lawyer.
Okay. But can we evade the law?
Well, the long arm of the law, we ultimately catch up with evaders. But when you say evade the law, there are some exceptions that the law provides that smart Alex can play around with. For example, there's tax evasion. You can manage to play your game in such a way that you pay lesser tax.
Okay.
Some try not to pay tax at all by playing some games. There are also people who do things that ordinarily will amount to an offense in one jurisdiction, but another jurisdiction will not amount to an offense.
But evading the law is better than breaking it.
Well,
if I got it right.
A thin line between as a legislative draftman. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the jurisdiction. It depends on the facts of each situation. So, what you call evading the law, in some other situation, we actually mean breaking the law. For example, if a 7-year-old boy does some things, the law will say is not capable of committing offenses, such offenses. But if a 17-year-old boy does those things, he will be sanctioned as an adolescent. If a 27-year-old person does it, he will be convicted as a criminal of an indictable offense. God forbid, if a 7-year-old boy throws something intentionally that kills somebody else, the law will not treat him as a murderer. A 17-year-old boy will be treated as an adolescent, but a 27-year-old will be treated as a first-degree murderer. So it depends on the circumstances.
Okay, time is not very much on our side. The Nigerian justice system, what do you lawyers call it?
Well, you said it. The justice system encapsulates the one arm of government, one out of the three, that is called the judicial system, but it doesn't end there. There you have the judges, you have the judicial staffs, the judges of the high court of records, the judges of the lower courts and all that. But you have lawyers, they are part of the justice system. You have the police and the law enforcement agent that helps in the investigation, arrest, and charge of offenders. They are part of the justice system. You have the traffic officers. You also have regulatory agencies that ensure that laws are enforced. They are part of the justice system to some extent. Even for me, the parliament where law is made, they make good laws, and if they make bad laws and the judiciary, the judge, the court shoots it down, and they go and amend it to be able to say we have good law. Do you want to say they are not part of the justice system? So the justice system is wider than the judicial system. Even can you exclude the governor of a state or the president from the justice system? Every law that will become, every bill that will become a law has to be assented. It's after the assent of the governor or the president, as the case may be, that it becomes a law. The enforcement of the law, as led by the Attorney General of the state or the Federation of the Ministry of Justice, is for and on behalf and at the instance of the governor and the president who appoints him, as the case may be. So the governor even himself personifies justice. So the justice system goes beyond the one arm of government that is the judiciary, but it is good enough that you have a whole arm of government dedicated completely to the attainment of justice.
In spite of the correctional and custodian centers now being referred to, whatever it is it's called, our prisons remain congested. What is the matter?
Well,
is it part of, I want to maybe take it together, why does it take eternity to complete court cases in our country?
The truth of the matter is that it does not take eternity to complete cases. But because
we see it,
our perception, our orientation, our sense of justice, and according to the judicial and legal maxim that justice delayed is justice denied. Yes. But then, the truth of the matter is this. A lot of factors interplay to delay cases in court, especially civil cases. But let's not go to civil cases, because what determines whether a civil case is expeditiously tried and adjudicated or not is the combination of many factors. The court itself, the lawyers themselves, the litigants themselves. Actually, the truth of the matter is that it will always be favorable to a party for the case to be quickly dispensed with, while it will be favorable or beneficial to the other party for the case to be stalled. So it is now the judge who will try to maintain a balance and make the justice. But when it comes to criminal cases, that is where our major concern should be. The Administration of Criminal Justice Act and the Administration of Criminal Justice Law of Osun State made very good provisions for expeditious trial of criminal cases. But then the question is about the enforcement and implementation of these laws.
Who enforces?
It is a combination of agencies, institutions, and personal commitment and political will. It also requires budgetary allocation, funding, and willpower. Yeah. And it's my hope that in Osun State, as we await the appointment of the next Attorney General eagerly by our amiable governor, I hope that will be an area of transformational reform.
Time is not on our side, but this question I must ask, because someday we'll have to bring you here for bigger, longer period. Lawyers, are they client-centered or economically centered?
Well, every lawyer must be client-centered in the sense of service delivery. They must be economically centered in the sense of their business and career, their source of income, but primarily they should be justice-centered and justice-oriented. Because as we are called, we are all ministered in the temple of justice. If your client does not have a good case, it's your duty to tell him or her, you don't have a good case. And this is the extent of your rights. And this is where you are liable. Even legal advisory hands fees. So you should consult with your client and let them pay you due fees. In some other society, if you advise your client wrongly for the purpose of just getting him to go to court, he may have a right to sue you.
Okay. I thank you very much. As I've said, we will hopefully bring you back someday in the future for us to have this very engaging topic. I'd like to thank you very much for finding time out of your crowded schedules to be here. You had a court sitting today and you still managed to be here. It's
my pleasure. I want to thank my boss, the Soldier and Permanent Secretary that released me to honor your invitation.
Okay. I have been in the last 45 minutes or so been in very engaging discussion with Mr. KAYODE TITILOYE, a senior lawyer in this state and a former director, legislative drafting and legal services of the Osun State House of Assembly, and currently the director in charge of commercial and legal drafting, Osun State Minister of Justice. Mr. KAYODE, thank you for being here. We'll see you some other time. Until 2 weeks' time, when I have the privilege of coming your way again, I am your host. Call me your alternate host, and you may be right. ADETOYESE. Good afternoon to you all.